whereas Fishing Frenzy Deluxe was a huge hit in the US. And definitely the mobile market is not just the US, it's not just Europe. It's expanding into the East, especially China and India, and it's been a dominant market, even further east in Japan and Korea. So you have to widen your horizons and explore each of these. So lastly, I'd just like to show you one game, and then we can talk about whatever it is that you'd like to know about the company or the process. Let's see if I can get this started. So that was a game we just recently launched in partnership with Chilingo and Universal. It's made on Woody Woodpecker, the cartoon character. And all of that work was done here. So the design, the sound effects, the audio, the visuals, all the engineering work as well. There are many other types of games also that fall in this casual gaming space that we launched. But when we started, we certainly could not have done that. So I think we've learned a lot over a period of a couple of years. And what I would like to suggest is whatever you decide to do, you try to follow the same process. Try to perfect it as much as you can. Okay. So I'm open for any questions you guys might have. That's it.
My name is I'm a graduate from GICAM. So I have been working from 2 years or so. So I have been thinking that we should come up with a startup. So the first question that comes in my mind is that how do we get customers and fans, like we face the problem in the start and eventually overcame them. But for me to start, where should we look to get the customers and clients and build apps for them, like give us a start in the process?
So I mean that's a very broad question. What I think you need to decide is what type of customers you want first. What are the types of characteristics and traits they should have. So when we started trying to fix the problem of generating revenue, for us the problem was that if you try to offer software development services to people who didn't know how to make games, the scope of the project would never be decided in advance. They would want you to settle on a fixed cost for it. That would be unfair to you, basically, because in their assessment things are really simple to do, and they wouldn't know exactly what else might come up. So as you build a game, you have to really experience the gameplay, try to see if it works well and if it doesn't. And so firstly, we looked for people who knew how to make games in advance. We didn't want to work for any client or any customer who wasn't in the business already, who didn't know how to make games themselves. On the app side, again, we looked for people who are somewhat mature in terms of the engineering skill in their own team. That means whenever we work with even a startup to help them build their platform or build their technology stack, we've looked for people who actually, the founders or the core engineering team, who actually have done it before. They've built these things before. It's not their first time. And the reason for that is because it allows you to scope out and predict what might come up down the road. Now, in terms of winning business, it's a sales call, essentially. So, how do you do sales? You have to build trust. How do you build trust? It's easier for me to trust someone who can show me they've done this work before. So having a good portfolio of apps or games definitely helps in that process. What else builds trust is communication. Being very effective at it, being very calm and composed, and being very, being very mindful of how people communicate outside of Pakistan if you're trying to win their trust. In which case, time matters a lot. If they email you, they expect a response in a few hours, maximum. If you're on an email thread, they expect you to address all of the points they've raised clearly. So communication, effective communication, proof of work you've done before. I think some sense of what your team is. So apart from you as an individual, who else is in your setup? Every company, every entity should pass the test of, there's this phrase in the value, the sort of bus test. If there's if somebody has an accident, can the company still keep running? Someone vital in the company, if they're sick for 2 months, can the company still survive? Because stuff happens, you can't ever predict in life what might come up next week or so, and businesses have to rely on minimizing the risks, right? So if you can come up with a structure in which responsibility is delegated, and there is a group, there's a team behind your venture, you can then solve these problems more easily. Often, if you're online, people will find you. If you've done work, they can see, they can explore. Again, they can find you. Otherwise, how do you sell anything? You do it by word of mouth, you talk to your friends, you let your colleagues know, you let people who you have worked with in the past know, all of those things. Any other question?
My name is Anand. I am an expert in Tech Alliance. I would like to ask about the game that we top 10 in China. What actually market that game?
So the iPhone games or app space is interesting in the sense that you can often rely on word of mouth to get your game attention. Now, word of mouth basically means someone notices it and then talks about it on a forum, or they post a YouTube video for it showing the gameplay, or they basically are sharing their scores with their friends, and that's how the friends find out about it. And so if you build those mechanics in your game, there's a higher chance of it getting noticed. And also in specific markets, I think it is basically connecting with the audience in some way. So in China, language is a big barrier for most of them. So if you localize your game, it's a higher chance of people being able to notice it. If you localize the description, if you translate in Chinese and then post it, there's a higher chance of, again, them knowing what the features are and then trying them all out. In terms of Bam Bam Dash, I think it just, the character, the way he moves, the way he looks, the type of, audio snippets, what he says when he falls on the platform. I think those connected with the audience, that really helped us. And we discovered it accidentally. We hadn't designed it for that purpose. So after that, we then started thinking about more ideas that could take advantage of that. You could also explore what has worked in the market. You can actually, if you go to the App Store, you can see the analytics on each game. There's App Annie and a few other sites that actually show you that. So you can see by country, what games are doing really well to make an assessment for that. There are lots of marketing channels you can use. If you do want to market your game, there are game sites, review sites where you can advertise. There are offer walls. Tapjoy has one, for instance, that you can promote your game through. There are sort of banner ads that you can put in your own games to cross-promote your titles. AdMob provides a banner ad that you can use for that purpose. But app discovery is a big problem. So if you're looking for some interesting problem to solve, that's a big one on the App Store. It's like, how do you make it easy for a developer to put a game or an app in front of the audience? There are millions of users out there who won't find it because the App Store has 400, 500,000 apps on it. Any other questions?
My name is Zishan Ahmed. I am a telecommunication engineer. I have a question. You told us that your main focus is on games. Did you have an idea of iPhone applications like Viber or Skype or networking applications?
Are you asking me if we thought about those and if we decided on purpose not to do them?
On that field?
Well,
networking field or anything like that?
Well, I know people who've achieved a lot of success by focusing on apps. A friend of mine actually worked on a VNC application, one that allows you to connect with a PC, show the desktop on your phone, and control it. And made a lot of money in that space as well. When we started focusing on the platform, we consciously decided that there was a specific type of team that would be required for either apps or games. And we decided to pursue the category that had much more success as a category. So if you look at sort of monetizing content on the App Store, you can easily do that. There's a top grossing list that you can browse, and you can see how many of those apps are games or are utility applications. Turns out, more than half are games, so somewhere around 2/3 are games. And the reason for that, I think, is that they monetize better. That people might still use apps a lot, but they don't cost you much. So if you use Skype on your phone, you're using it pretty much for the free feature, which is doing audio chat or video chat with your friends. You're not using it for voice over IP as much, where you might have to pay for the number. And so we, on purpose thought this was the better category for us to focus on. And so we haven't done a lot of apps. We've tried a few, just to see what it's like.
Because I have asked this question because there is a vast field on that side. My own project is that I have to run my home devices from mobile. Wherever I can control my home devices from my mobile.
So I think the nice thing about a platform is that there can be lots and lots of players in it, right? So just like the desktop has lots of markets, there's on the desktop there's a database market, there's a word processing market, there's there's a browser market. There are lots and lots of categories of apps or games that have done really well. Just like that, mobile is exactly the same. So I think, though, in order to make something in that, make a big dent, you do need a team that's set up so that you are able to grow in all the right areas. So if you were making a Skype-like application, for example, you need to get lots of users in order for that to be successful. And so I would assume that you need to be a cross-platform player. You would need a Skype app for Android, one for iOS. You need one on Windows Mobile. You would probably need a Windows app as well as a Mac app, so that people who are not on mobile device also can use it. And so you will then need to think in those terms. Like, how do I grow a business around this space? Any other questions?
My name is Akhter and I'm a software engineer. Actually, I always wanted to do something for my own, but I also have some ideas to some kind of product.